Ladies and gentlemen, it's time! Brought to you by Ringside, the best in boxing. It's the Zapata Brand Boxing Podcast. Introducing first, fighting out of the Zapata Brand Studio in Berwick, Pennsylvania. He is an expert in boxing and bagels, Josh Zapata!
Fight fans, welcome to the Zapata Brand Podcast, brought to you by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast, and you too can get upwards of 40% off selected brands. Well, my next guest is the co-host of the wildly popular podcast, weighing in. He's also a veteran of Strikeforce, Bellator MMA, and of course the UFC.
Don't leave Pride out. Pride, Dream.
Like
Let's just throw it all in there.
We'll put it all in. Pride. He's done a multitude of MMA organizations. His name is the one and only Josh the Punk Thomson. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing good, brother, man. Thanks for having me on. You reached out to me through my DMs. Now you slid into my DMs, and
no Diddy, buddy. Whoa, hold up,
no Diddy. Yeah, we ain't doing the no Diddy yet. So,
go ahead.
Yeah, man, with cheese, man, and you hit me up. I was like, yeah, I got tomorrow. Tomorrow's good. I was thinking do tomorrow around this time. So perfect, man.
Yeah, it was really good. I appreciate your time here. I know it is your birthday weekend, so it's kind of on there. You're turning up here. What, 46?
I think so. 46 or 47. I think I might be 46.
Well, I'll tell you what. Maybe physically you don't feel 46, but you look good, man.
Oh no! I feel physically like 50.
Why try to give you out there? I try to give you an out.
You know what's funny is it's funny when I hit 45, I started telling people I was 50, and they're like, why are you telling people you're 50? We know you're not 50. I said, yeah, but those strangers that I just met, they don't know that I'm not 50. And all I'm looking for is I'm fishing for a compliment, man. I want them to tell me you look good for your age. They're like, no, you're not.
No, I'll tell you certainly do. I mean, you got the hair, you got everything going on here. You got the chin, you got it all going on, Josh. I tell you, you got me jealous here.
This is the saddest part of when I tell people that I'm 50. Then no, I don't believe you. Let me see your ID. And I show them my ID. And obviously my ID tells them that I'm 45, turning 46. And they still go, oh, yeah, you are 50.
Yeah.
Wait, obviously, like simple math is not in your forte. So anyways, I love it. I love it, though. I love to and when they agree with me, I'm like, yeah, see, I take my ID back. Yeah, see.
But honestly, even for a fighter, you don't have the flat nose, the beat up face, the scar tissue. Maybe with the wrestling, you might have a little cauliflower ear. But I mean, ultimately, you feel you if you continue to work out, which I'm sure you do. Yeah. You still keep in great shape.
Yeah. The hardest part, I think, obviously at our age. How old are you? You got some grays in that beard. 43. So 43.
This is mascara. I color that with mascara. Don't kid yourself.
Oh, jeez. So, I mean, like the hardest part at our age, really, is keeping the muscle on. So we can put the weight on. That's not the problem. It's just keeping the muscle on. So I've had a hard time, I think, since fighting, like training 3 times a day, like trying to keep my muscle on, and that's the hardest part. I've really slimmed out. So everyone's like, "Oh, you look good." I'm like, "No, what I've done is I've lost all my muscle. Now I'm just like skinny fat." And it's like you can tell when you meet girls, like, damn, they look good, but then like if you're hanging out with them, whatever, you're like, you're just kind of skinny, and then you see their legs have no definition, their arms have no definition. You're just skinny fat,
right?
Yeah? You're on that cocaine diet. Is that you know what it's like? I'm telling you, man. You see these girls, you see them in Vegas, you see them in Miami, you see them wherever, right? You're like, all right, you're in your 40s. You're that skinny. You're skinny fat. Like you're on that. Anyway.
Yeah, but out this way towards where we're at in rural, like a Miami, it's not. We're like Ohio 4 out here. It's not. Yeah. There's not really the cream of the crop this way. I mean, but
at least they're well fed, though. At least they're well fed.
They're well fed, Josh. They are well fed.
Where are you at? You're in Ohio?
No, I'm actually in Pennsylvania, right in the middle. Okay, we're about an hour 20 from hour 40 from Philadelphia north.
Okay, so you're more towards the Poconos.
Yeah, Poconos,
Okay.
right around there,
Yeah,
right around that area.
okay.
Yeah, so
Perfect.
we're skipping a hop into the city, but we tend to keep to ourselves out here. It's not, again, it's
And there's
open
nothing
carry.
wrong with that, man. In this day and age, man, I moved out of the city in the Bay Area, and I was thinking to myself, where can I go to get away from all these lunatics? And so
Where
just
you
getting
at?
out. I was in the Bay Area. Now I'm in North Texas, so I'm like in north of Dallas, about 30 minutes.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's
So
a
I
good
just
area.
moved here. I've been here for about a year now.
How you like it?
So I love it, man. I love it. But look, a lot of my move, and I think for a lot of people, a lot of their moves when they moved during COVID or they moved during this time, I should say, right, is they just wanted to get a little bit of normalcy. And I think
Mhm.
being in the city is just not. You live in a bubble. You think the world revolves around you, and I was part of that. I was part of thinking like, man, I know this, I know that. It's everything is. I know what I'm doing. It's right for me, but it's not right for everybody. And
Right.
so I think to learn to appreciate what everyone else is going through in the US. Got to move outside of your bubble. And that bubble is whether it's LA, I was in the Bay Area in San Jose with Silicon Valley, literally like where the tech industry is built. And
Right.
so you have to get out of that bubble. You got to get away from, I don't want to say people because I love a lot of the people there. You just got to get out of that bubble of thinking that everything is about you. And that's hard. That's a hard situation to be in.
Well, that's interesting. So let me go back to that.
Mhm.
So you grew up in California, right?
Yeah.
In the Bay Area, right?
Mhm.
There are strong regulations when that whole the C word happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then you went to Texas. Where did you go there? Honestly, for maybe financial reasons? Just say, hey,
No,
no.
I mean, yes, and no. So I went there for a couple different reasons. I went there mainly for the schools. For my kids. I was sending my kids to private schools in California. So my daughter being in preschool, my son being in like second, third grade, and it's costing me close to $38,000 to $40,000 a year.
Right.
That is just not sustainable for someone in my profession, right? I'm a professional athlete. You're gonna retire eventually when you retire. And then I did well with Bellator, doing analyst work. I'm doing some side analyst work now. The podcast does really well. All of these things, but it's not sustainable, man. You can't, with the time over the time frame that the money's going to continue to go up. Inflation's going to continue to rise. It's done it since the beginning of us, paying taxes. Basically, it's constantly
Right.
just things go up. And that being said, it's just not sustainable. Like by the time both my kids get to high school, it will end up probably somewhere around the $70,000 range, maybe 80 for both kids. And so that's just not, who makes 80 grand a year that just to go for school. That's not counting your mortgage. That's not counting to feed the kids. That's not counting, activities,
That's disposable
sports.
income.
Yeah,
Disposable
that's
income.
really, and I know, and everyone's like, oh yeah, but you're investing in your kids. I get it, but you also got to have a house for your kids to live in. You got to have food on the table to feed them. You've got to be able to do all those things. And so I saw the writing on the wall. I saw that things were continuing to go up. I saw that, the businesses that I own there, I own gyms. Well, I mean, I had people throw rocks through the windows, break in, steal my iPad, I mean, not my iPads, but my computers, my Apple computers off the desk, just rip them, grip and rip and run. I had people break in and steal, some shin guards, some, boxing gloves, some weights, whatever they could get their hands on in a quick, minute long, 60-second long burst. And it just wasn't sustainable, man. It wasn't. And there's nothing you can do. Like literally someone breaks the glass, runs through it, grabs it, leaves. Cops don't know who it is. They don't really spend out a search. And it's no disrespect to them. It's just, I understand they've got their hands full with other things in a city. That's one. Two is you're looking for a needle in a haystack. You don't know who it is. It could be a homeless person. It could be someone who is a high school kid. It could be an adult. You don't know. So it's a needle in the haystack. So I never held anything against it, but it's like you can't live that way, own businesses that way. I mean, shit, my neighbor owned a candy store. I mean, they got broken into 4 or 5 times.
In the Bay
Like literally,
Oh,
yeah. I had my gym. They had like a homemade candy spot. My buddy who owned a farmer's insurance company 5 doors down in the same complex that we were in. They broke in. I'm like, what are you gonna steal from an insurance company? Paperwork? Like they and there was nothing there. They don't keep cash on site. They don't, it's like
Right.
there was nothing there. And they got broken into twice. So it's just really like smash and grab, just wondering what you can get. And so I just knew that reality is you can't keep owning this business the way it is, keep getting broken into, and just the cops they can't do anything. Their hands are tied. That's one thing for business wise. Secondly, for the kids, it's not sustainable. By the time the kids get to being seniors in high school, you're paying, $40,000 per kid, maybe even more, maybe a little bit less, whatever it is. Depends on what the market is that time. And that's not sustainable. And so that, and then along with gas prices. I mean, gas prices when I was there were 785, 790. Sorry,
Holy
six.
cow.
Sorry, 685,
Oh,
690. Sorry, not sevens. Six. They were in the 650s, above 650s when I was there. They've dropped now considerably. It's election time, to be honest.
Yeah.
So they've dropped down to, I think, 380 now, I think is what they are. But I'm in Texas right now. I paid 235 the other day.
That's
okay. I'm good, bro. I'm good. I can pay 235.
Yeah.
In California, I had a Dodge diesel truck. You know, I had another vehicle as well as a gas vehicle, but my Dodge diesel truck, diesel for some reason was more than gas. And I don't know if you know anything about diesel, but it's just really what's left over after you produce gas.
Correct.
And so I'm like, how is diesel more than gas? And so, you know, when you're paying 685 and you're paying 750 for diesel, I'm like, this is just not, it's not sustainable to continue to pay those prices and make that, you know. And so if you're a small business owner, it's hard to keep up with that. And not knowing where being an independent contractor for Bellator, for, you know, other companies that do boxing, other companies that do MMA events, working for them, doing these, doing analyst work, you don't know when the next job's coming. So you got to make sure that you're always on point. You make sure you're financially fiscal with your money. And I'm very good with my money, but you just got to always look, you got to be forward thinking, especially right now and what goes on. And so I know we went on to this tangent about all this stuff.
You know what, Josh, I love this.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, I thought we were going to, you know, jump right into UFC and 306 and whatever. But the fight, believe it or not, I own a business myself. I own a bagel shop here. And it's funny, you were talking about inflation and what have you. My accountant did my taxes just because I'm always on an extension. So, because it's so complicated.
Same.
So we just had ours done. And I realized it was a 43% increase. Okay. And I'm thinking, my top line, I'm thinking, holy cow, 43% from where it was. However, the little bits, and you don't realize utilities, 1% here, this utility, 2% here, labor price went from, you know, $8 an hour. Cause believe it or not, our minimum wage is $7.25, but we don't pay anybody $7.25. They're at 15 and 16 an hour.
Yeah.
That jumped incredibly. So at the end of this whole year, after you're thinking you're doing unbelievable numbers, it's an 8% increase from 43 to 8. So when you say it's unsustainable, you're right. It's unsustainable. I'm essentially an independent contractor too. My wife, I'm lucky. I knock on wood. She's a teacher. So every 2 weeks she gets the same check. So she's, you know, and she don't get it.
That's nice. It's regular though. You understand what you're getting.
Yeah,
you know,
and she don't get it, and I understand that because you're probably like me, where you're an entrepreneur. So you're like, hey, I'm gonna risk it a little bit to go here because the end game's over here. I'll risk that for that, and sometimes guess what? It doesn't work. Sometimes you lose a fight, it doesn't work, but you still have that income from the wife. So again, you when you moved, let me ask you this too: when you moved, was it your core values? Did that have anything to do with it too?
I mean, like there was some things like I grew up in San Jose. I moved away for high school and I came back after high school and came in and lived back in San Jose again. Majority of my family's there. So I'm half Mexican. Right. So my mom is Mexican, Native American. My grandfather was full-blooded Yucky Indian. My grandmother was she was Mexican / Spanish. And so, I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up in San Jose, and my dad was from that side as well, but my dad's predominantly like white. And so I felt like, yeah, I need to go back. I felt like it was a place for me, especially if you're young. That's where you should be. I mean, like I feel like when you're younger, just experiencing the city life, understanding like, look, there's nightclubs, there's bars, there's plenty of work. You can get a job anywhere. It just depends on what you want to do. Like that's something I never had a problem with, getting jobs. But I stopped working a real job when I was 22 years old. I got signed to the UFC. I'm like, okay, look, I can't do this job part-time. I can't be a part-time worker and then a full-time worker and a part-time fighter. I can't do that. I've got to make sure that I'm fully in on this thing. And it's you've got to be dedicated to that. So my core values in terms of me moving, a little bit had to do with that. Okay. It really just came down to it did come down to a little bit of the COVID vaccine. Like I wasn't willing to give my kids a experimental shot. And it just was something I wasn't comfortable with. They spend over a decade normally to develop a vaccine to see if it's safe. And they did this within a year. I was just not ready. I'm not ready for that. So, you know, and I know I have friends, close family members too, that lost their job. They don't even have the values that I have. Like they're not the same as me. Like even though they're family members, they're not the same as me. They were like, look, I just refuse to do it because I don't know. Like I have all my other vaccines. No one's saying that I'm anti-vax. just that, it just wasn't for them. They're like, look, I'm not going to take a chance. I don't know what this thing has been through. I don't know what they experimented on. I don't know what they've done with it. And I mean, we look back now and we're like, okay, it's very reasonable. It's understandable. So, it is what it is. But outside of that, there was that, but I wasn't too. I mean, my kids have all their other stuff, and they're good. They're like that's not the issue at all. I did see a difference and a turn towards education and kids, and I wasn't happy with that as well. But like I said, my kids went to Christian schools, and I still wasn't happy with that. So it didn't matter what it was. I wanted something a little bit different. The last thing, one of the biggest reasons why this was the number one reason why I moved is I lived in my house, my last house that I still own, but I had bought and was living there in before I moved, was my neighbors. I had lived there for 13 years. My neighbors never once, when they came out and saw me, they came out and saw another neighbor putting the trash out or walking their dog or doing whatever, never said hi. And I literally, my daughter being like 2 or 3 years old would come out and like she'd be playing in the front yard while I'm taking the trash out, whatever it is. And she would yell across the street, hi. And they would just look at her and walk back inside. And that's when I knew, I'm like, I have to move. I've been here for a year. Now I'm just developing relationships. I was born and raised in San Jose. I've been here a year and I've already got kids knocking on my door. Hey, can, so-and-so, because my son's name and my daughter's name, can they come out and play? We're going to be playing baseball or we're going to be fishing in the pond. That's, one community over. Like that's what I moved here for. I moved here because these kids still ride their bikes in the street. These kids still play baseball in the cul-de-sac. I mean,
right.
I don't know where you live, but maybe they still do it there, but they definitely don't do it in the Bay Area.
Well, we live in a rural area, so everybody knows each other. And what you just said was exactly ours. We have my kids ride the side by side on the street. To give you what kind of place we live in, they can ride the side by side, which is an ATV essentially.
Yeah, you can't do that in California.
No, there would be some issues there. And my one kid's 10 years old, and that's how it is. They grew up by the farm, so I appreciate that. I appreciate that kind of value that you have for your children, because I want my children to be the same way. I grew up in the city area, moved out here when I was 19, opened my own business, knew nobody out here, and you do develop relationships and you find where you are comfortable. And I was able to move so young because that's all I knew. I didn't know anything else. Mm-hmm. So I hooked up with a good person who put me in business, and here I am, and have a relationship out here where I can have my kids grow up in this area here. And that was the other thing that was important. But one of the things I want to ask you this too, since we're on this subject, and I was going to be it later on, but I want to jump right into it. I'm on a roll here with this. So how do you have, you're very extremely successful and you have children, you have, I would assume a wife, I'm assuming wife, correct?
Yeah.
You have a wife, you have children, you have dates to get to, you have deadlines to meet, you have places to be. How do you balance work life in your personal life? Because you've got all this stuff going on. I struggle with that. My business is almost 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365. I am the guy at the top. If something happens, it's me. If something is good, it's me. How do you find it to manage that work-life balance in your life that you can kind of pass along to someone else like me, who, I mean, it's all over the place. But you're on a different level, and you seem to, because one of the things you said to my brother was, weekends are out. It's my family time. And I respected that. I said, you know what? That's a good guy. That's a good man. That's a good father. That's a good husband. And of course, I've been divorced once already, so I wasn't the greatest there. So how do you find that work-life balance?
You need to figure out what your priorities are. That's it. Like, is your priorities just to make money? Because I mean, last time, like I've made a lot of money throughout my career. I have what I need in terms of investments right now to do well and still do well. I'm not broke, but I'm also like not rich. And my goal when I was younger was just to make sure that I could enjoy my time on this earth, whether it's going mountain biking, whether it's going to the beach with the kids, whether it's just going to the beach by myself. Like, people need to understand that grinding nonstop. I get the goals. I understand it. Like, I've got a family member who is very, very successful, and I don't want to drop too much of him into this, but I want to say This guy though is working nonstop, and I love him to death. He's probably my closest family member in both sides of my families. The hard part is though, is that he jeopardizes a lot of time with his family because he is so successful. I mean, he owns one of the biggest companies. He owns the biggest company in this industry in the world, and he's just constantly on the phone. He's constantly, and it wasn't until like the last 2 or 3 years, I'd say 2 years, that I was having conversations with him. Like, man, you're so engulfed that like it's affecting you as a person. I love this guy. Like he's, like I say, it's like a brother to me, but he's my cousin. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. You got to figure out what you want to do. But I think for those people like him, it's the chase. It's the, I'm almost there. But then guess what? You've done it, but you're almost there because now it gets bigger. Now I got to do is get that one little thing and I'll be done. Then you get that thing and you're like, I still have time. I can still do this. And so he is extremely, extremely successful. For me, I never really cared. Like I cared about being the best at fighting.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I was going to bring out. As a fighter, you got to have that. You got to have that.
But I achieved that. But that's why I didn't have kids till I was almost retired, pretty much retired.
Okay.
I mean, like, yeah, you don't have that until towards the end. Like, at least I didn't. I was like, I don't want to look. Fighting's a very selfish sport. You're not trying to tear yourself away to go train because your kids are at home going, no, don't go train. It's hard. I was leaving for Bellator events, and kids are like, oh, you gotta leave again. Like that conversation is like, no crying, just more like, oh, I don't want you to go. Why are you leaving? Like, when are you back? And that conversation, that sit down talk is very difficult. And so just understanding what the purpose is. There's times you have to do something, and there's times where you can put it off for a couple hours to go spend some quality time with your family. And also too, that doesn't always have to be with your family. Sometimes you need quality time for yourself. I know I don't like to use the mental health thing for men, but men need time away for themselves, and we don't take it enough for ourselves. Like whether it's, I'm not talking about going out to party, and I'm not talking about to go out with your boys and get drinks. I'm saying time to just get yourself on, like either on a mountain bike, go for a run, give yourself that 30, 40 minutes a day just to do something for you. Whether that's going to buy a pair of shoes, like, hey, I just need a new pair of shoes. Let me go get my own time for me. And let's do something for myself. And that's difficult because as you get kids, as you work at a bagel shop, as you're just grinding, trying to make sure your bagel shop is successful, you stop forgetting about what you need, and you start thinking about all the things that need to be done. I got to do this. Okay, after this, I got kids this. I got my wife's this. I got dinner this. I have to. Everything's a schedule, and we know that. So now, what do you do to make it about you? And I just started a new podcast with Bobby Lashley, Rich Chow. It's called The Dad Dojo. And we're talking about how do you raise your kids to be good individuals, to be respectful to other parents, to be respectful to other kids, but also to be top tier athletes. My son is on a nationally ranked lacrosse team. He's 10 years old. My daughter is, just starting sports right now, and she's 5 years old. What do you do? Like, how do I still do all that, get them to all their sporting events, and still be a good husband, still help out with dinner, still, help out with shopping? How can I help around the house? What can I do? In terms of my other businesses, I sold all my gyms, and now I own one big major gym that is run by a corporation. And so I'm just a silent partner now on that. So that worked out perfectly on that side. But on this side of it, what can you do to still be, you have to focus on being a good person at home, for your kids, and dialing back. Like if I work an extra hour at the bagel shop, will that affect your top line the most, or will that extra hour with your kids affect your life at home? Which one? Like for me, I feel better after I spend an hour with my kids. I feel my life feels better. My energy level feels better. I feel like, I don't want to say like I feel rewarded, because that's part of just being a father, but I feel good about it. I feel like, man, I spent a good hour with my son teaching him how to do a pullback tuck, in soccer, teaching him how to do a rainbow, teaching him how to, do a step over and scissor and then come back across and shoot. Like you spend that hour, I see the benefits in him. And literally after I see it a day or two later, we're at practice or in a game, I see him do it. I'm like, that was me. That was that hour I could have sat in my studio filming a podcast, but that hour I spent with him is what I just saw right now on the field. He didn't have that before that hour. Those are the importance to me. Like, we're not going to live forever, but one thing we'll never get back is time with our family and our kids. And so I make sure that to me is more of a priority right now.
Oh boy, that was an eye opener. That put
it was a lot. I know it was a lot. I know it was a total lot.
Listen, it puts me in a different perspective, and it just happened in the last 6 months where I'm starting to draw back because the shop kind of runs itself. I'm just that idiot walking around trying to critique everything. Honestly, I go out and talk to people and do whatever. But it's funny. Let me ask you this. I'll piggyback off that. And this is funny because I asked this to Dana White. I saw Dana probably, I think 2 months ago, and we're talking. I said, "How do you treat your kids?" Because now he did say he wasn't broke growing up, but he was, they struggled because his mom was never around. His dad was just an alcoholic. I had a very horrible home life at home initially, so we didn't have anything. So now, obviously, when my kids come here and I can afford this, and we got side by sides and go karts and the new sneakers that come out and whatever. How do you pull back a little bit in order for them to? Because I don't want them to think everything's handed to them. As growing up as a fighter too, I fought in New Jersey. We had to grind for everything and fight for everything just to get there. I think people need adversity in their lives. And once they get to that point, you're kind of like, I got that. But that also keeps that little PTSD in the back of your head. You don't want to go back to being that broke guy sleeping on the floor trying to get your next meal. But that feeling that you don't want your kids to feel that. It's kind of like a protection mechanism we have. How do you draw a line in that area? Because I struggle with the home stuff, and I also struggle with that because I'm always like, okay, all right, I'll get it to you this time. Let's just get this. How do you draw that line? Because that's hard.
Do you know? It is. We actually just did episode 14 for the Dad Dojo podcast, and we were talking about that exact thing. Is you're handcuffing your kids by doing everything for them. And it's funny, I said this, my wife, she would hand feed my son until he was like 3.5, 4 years old. I'm like, why are you hand feeding him? The number one, the very beginning portion of kids when they're learning their hand-eye coordination is how they feed themselves. Is they grab the food and they put it in their mouth. That's their natural instinct is, I'm hungry. What can I grab and pick up and put in my mouth? That's how they learn the hand-eye coordination. And now when you're hand feeding your kid until they're 5 or whatever it is, you're taking that kind of away from them. And everyone's like, oh, I don't want the mess. Do you want your kids to have motor skills? No, eventually they'll develop them, of course. But that shouldn't even be an issue. It should be like, hey, like they should be able to feed themselves. As long as you're putting the proper food, avocado in front of them, mashed up carrots, potato, whatever it is, right? Something they can't choke on, then you should be good. And for me, in terms of with the kids, it's hard. It's extremely hard. I grew up pretty poor. Like, when my parents got divorced, I would go with my grandmother and we'd work in the fields, picking apricots and prunes and cutting apricots and during all summer. So all that money went to my grandmother to help her feed us for the rest of the school year. And so it was me and like 4 or 5 of my other cousins, sometimes more, depending on, if they were working other jobs. But we'd work in the fields basically during the summer, and that money went to my grandmother. It's hard. So when I see my kids going like, oh, but the good thing about with my kids, they don't ask for anything. They have everything. Like, what do you need? What do you really need? Like, I'll give you an example. My son, they had like this dinosaur thing at their school where they megalodon teeth they had for sale. One was like $500. My son's like, can I get it? I'm like, no. You don't need a framed megalodon tooth. No, we're not spending $500 on a megalodon tooth. Because I know you're just going to put it in your room. It's going to sit on the wall and you're never going to care about it ever again. And so then I said, if you can find something else that you want, and I gave him a price range, and he started looking around and he started having options like, oh, what about this? But he was asking me, what about this one? What about this one? And I looked at him, I said, if you don't know, if it doesn't jump off the screen at you and it doesn't jump out at you and go, hey, this is the one I want, you don't need it. And I think all of a sudden it clicked. He's like, you're right. I don't need it. And he doesn't ask for me. He doesn't ask anything unless he really wants it. He'll come to me like, I really want this lacrosse stick. I really want this, lacrosse head. I really want this soccer ball, this new soccer ball that's out. I'm like, okay, cool. That's what you want. I want this rebounder. I really want this one because this one has this and this. It's hard, but I tell him, like, if you don't need it, I'm not buying it for you. If you can give me reasons on why you need it, are you going to use it every day? If you don't use it, I'm taking it back. Most of these places you buy things from, the return is free. I can buy things on Amazon and I can return it for free, even if it's used after a week or two. As long as, like, hey, if you're not going to use it, if I see you don't use it within the first week every single day and it costs me $400, I'm packing that shit up while you're at school and it's gone when you get home. Do not be surprised. Don't test me, son. Like, these are things that I'm just, but I agree with you. It is very difficult. It is very hard. You want your kids to have the best because we didn't always have the best. I had a rough upbringing. I wasn't starving ever, but I always had food on my table. But I know my grandmother, my mother, and especially my father was someone who worked his ass off to make sure I could travel for wrestling events, that I could play soccer and travel soccer. I could do all these things. And he could never make the events because he was always working. Unless my game fell on a Sunday, he could never make an event. The only time that he was able to make a wrestling event during the week was he took the night off when I had my senior night for wrestling in high school. That was the only night he ever made. The only time he ever watched me wrestle, unless it was on a Sunday. That was the only time.
Let me ask you if that, and if it gets too personal, let me know. The divorce that you went through with your parents and your dad showing up there. What did that mean to you when your dad showed up? Now now what it's like to work and whatever, and you didn't know you had much. But what it affected to have it you, and does it affect you even in growing up as to even your relationship with your current wife?
Yeah, I knew I never wanted to be divorced. That's one. Two is the relationship with my dad. Like, my dad, I was living with my dad at the time. So my mom wasn't even in the picture at the time. I was living with my dad. So when my dad came to the sport, when he came to my wrestling match, I knew he was at work. Always knew where he was. Him showing up was a surprise, to be honest. I just told him it was senior night. I was like, hey man, I know you have to work, but I want to let you know it's senior night. It's the last match. They're just representing seniors. So I'll get an award, whatever it is, for senior night. And he showed up. And so it was a big deal. In terms of the others with my family, when they got divorced, I just knew that, look, I didn't have a great relationship with my mother. And so after a year or two of living with my mom after they got divorced, I wanted to live with my dad. And it was a different lifestyle. It was something, my dad and I were very close. All the way up until the time my dad passed, him and I were very close. And he passed when I was really young. I was 26 years old. And so it was rough, man. It was a rough situation, rough life, and all that stuff. But like he set some good boundaries. I mean, I would say he was the father, but we had a very good friendship relationship. I'll give you an example. My dad didn't care. Like, if I was out until 2 a.m, he's like, look, as long as you're home by the time I get home. And I know that's probably not the best parenting advice, right? But at the time I was in high school, and he's like, look, I get you're going to, if I don't tell you that, you're going to find ways to get out of the house. If you really want to go meet a girl, your sophomore, junior year. And sure enough, it happened. He's like, I snuck out of my window. He's like, why would you sneak out of the window, break my screen? Now I got to replace the screen. We could just walked out the front door and said, hey, I'm going to go meet some friends. Okay. And I'll be back before, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., whatever it was, and instead he's like, well, you broke my screen. Now I got to pay for that. I got to do this. Like, he's just like, don't just tell me, like, hey, I'm leaving. At least I know that you're out. So if a cop calls me, because one time a cop did, it's like, hey, I've got 7 kids here. One of them is your son. They're all at the high school hanging out. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just all hanging out, and it's 3 a.m. And so, and it's like, he's like, okay, I'll come pick him up. And luckily my dad was friends with all the other parents. So we just all, he piled us all in the truck and took us all home one by one, and so that's the kind of dad my father was. He didn't jump the gun. He didn't overreact. So my relationship with him was very good. With my own son, I mean, it's a different time.
I mean, it is a different time.
It is completely different time, but we also are completely different people. My son is nothing like I was when I was younger. Nothing. He's complete opposite. My daughter more so like me, but my son, nothing like me. He's very soft-spoken, very, I don't want to say emotional, but like, he wears his heart on his sleeve. Like, if you upset him, he'll let you know. Like, he's not afraid to, like, speak his mind and tell you, like, hey, I'm not having this. And so it's but he's emotional about it. Like, he gets really upset, or he gets emotional about certain things if it's not right. And so, but no, I think it did affect me in terms of parents divorcing, and it was I think for me, it worked out for the best. Parents were not meant to be together, and if wife forced them to be together, I'm not an advocate of divorce at all. But I did feel like my life developed a lot better because it was not a happy home. And
Go ahead.
no, I just think, look, I think parents can make a conscious decision to say, hey, we need to work on this, this, and this, and have a conversation. Like, don't get me wrong. Like when we first had kids, like I would always kind of sometimes correct my wife in front of the kids. And she's like, you got to stop. And I'm like, you're right. You're absolutely right. Like, I'm sorry, but you've got to remember that you guys are a team. It's funny. My grandmother told me this a long time ago. It's not you versus her and her versus you. It's you and her versus the problem. And that changed my life.
That's powerful.
Because once you realize that I'm not trying to win against you and you shouldn't be trying to win against me. The two of us should be trying to win against whatever the issue is. So what can we do to solve this? And I think men, we have too many situations where we let our ego get in the way. And it has trickled down now to I won't say to our wives, but to women. Women now are in that same situation where they believe like, oh, I'm the breadwinner. I'm the one making money because I'm working hard. I'm making $120,000 a year. That they now do the same thing that men do. So now what you have is you have two alphas, basically. I'm the alpha, the female is the alpha at her work and her job and her industry, and good for her. I'm excited that women are making that money. Same thing with the male. The male is the alpha now at his work, or he's working and grinding. Now, when you get them at home in the same room, under the same roof, they're battling who's the alpha. And that's the problem. Instead of being like, hey, I do this and I do this. Like, I'm the person that argues with the mechanic when they're trying to rip off my wife. And my wife is the person that nurtures and takes care of the family and the kids and whatever it is. Or, argues with the bill collector on the phone because I don't want to do that shit. You find out what you each are good at and can contribute at. Like my wife knows, like if I have to start, she can hear it on, if somebody online, if I'm talking on the phone, whether it's Jeep or Cadillac or whoever it is that we're dealing with for the car service stuff, if she starts hearing me like go, is that really what this is all about? Or if I say something along this, she's like, babe, just give me the phone. She's just like, she knows I'm about to pop off. I'm like, I'm just gonna, hey, like there's certain people have certain benefits or certain ways of coping with things. Dealing with people over the phone is not one of mine. And so, what I mean? Like, no, it's just not.
And I'm
not the
opposite. I'm good at that. I'm good at dealing with people on the phone. I'm like the total opposite. Let me ask you, did you find before your father passed? And again, stop me if I'm ever overstepping my bounds. Did you ever find and now that you're a father, did you ever look back and say, now and you have a greater respect of what your dad did and how hard he worked?
Yeah, look, I always knew how hard my dad worked. That was not even the problem. It's the
maybe understanding the why. Maybe understanding the why you did it.
Well, look, there's just different situations. My dad I went through labor work when I was younger, right? I worked as a framer, I worked as a roofer, I worked as a landscaper. I did concrete for a little bit. I've done all manual labor stuff. And my dad, he ran and operated like body shops, like painters and body work and stuff for vehicles, cars. And it was different, man. It was just different. Like he worked so much to try to make sure I had all the things I need. Me, my jobs have never been that 9 to 5. I haven't had a real 9 to 5 job since I was 21, 22 years old. And so it's different from me and my kids. I'm constantly grinding to try to find different ways to make money because, the fight career changes and the goals change after you're done fighting. Right. I always respected what he did. And I look back and I'm like, man, he had to be a hard worker to make sure that I had wrestling shoes. I had, soccer shoes. I had a soccer ball. I had, knee pads for wrestling. I was able to travel with the wrestling team and the soccer teams, to all the events. That's important. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, well, hold on one second. You could just go with what you're going. I'll test because
I don't look at, I do appreciate it. I do look back and I appreciate that. But it's just different times. And I don't think that my son like my son, I think just recently, until about probably 2 years ago, he didn't even know I fought. And so like he was like, until one of my friends, so funny, my dad's like, you know, the kid's like, there was a little tussle with some kids. We were at a park, and my friend, one of my best friends, Trevor Prangley, was telling my son, like, you know, why didn't you just take him down? Because my son can wrestle a little bit. And he's like, you know, why don't you just take him down and mount him? Then he's like, so my dad had told me that my papa told me that I can't fight and fighting's not good. So I had to walk away. And he's like, you know, your dad used to fight. He's like, no, he didn't. My dad used to tell me, like, my dad tells me that fighting's not good and I shouldn't fight. And that's the way I raised my kid, right? Like, you know, unless you really need to defend yourself. And I've had this conversation with them, but yeah, no, I think being a good role model, talking to them about the positives of life, staying away from the combat areas of forcing kids to fight or wanting them to fight is something that I focus on.
So let me ask you this. Your dad had passed when you were 26, I believe you said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that was almost 20 years ago, right? Roughly around that time.
Yeah.
Can you not wait to the day? Because you obviously, and I don't know how much you talk to your dad about this. Do you wait for the days where your kids can have that intimate conversation, open conversation? Because it seems to me like you're a father who would have an open conversation with your kids about everything from, you know, drugs to sex to everything. Seems like that's an open book for you. Or can you not wait to that when you can actually be maybe, and I'm not saying that your dad never did, but be that person to be like, this is what I always wanted from my father?
No, my dad and I were like an open book. If there was something, if there was something, I mean,
but do you want to have that? Do you look for that conversation to happen? In my opinion, it's going to happen earlier nowadays with your kids to mold them to be greater than you have become, which you are wildly successful, but you want them to be more successful.
Yeah, I think that's every parent's dream, is for their kids to be happy and be successful in the things that they want to do. Like, success is measured in different levels. Like, look, I know a lot of people that are super successful that are worth, you know, billions, but they hate what they do. They're just good at it. You know, I know people that don't really have a whole lot of money, but they're the happiest people I've ever met, man. They're traveling around. They're literally like picking up jobs when they travel to other cities, and they work, you know, for 2-3 weeks, and then they quit and they go and move on because they got enough money to travel to another city. And so it really depends on what success is to you. I mean, for me, success is just making sure your kids are happy. That's it. They're healthy and they're happy. So my kids, I make sure that they're very active in sports. Not just that, but then we work out together. We do, you know, we do swim lessons together. We do not lessons, but we do swimming together. We do workout together. We do different types of stuff together that is not just specifically around sports, but also too just around being active around each other, showing each other. Like, we play pickleball. None of us have ever played pickleball, but we play pickleball together. My daughter's 5; she can barely hit it over the net, you know, and my son is, you know, 10, and my wife being around my age, you know, none of us have ever played pickleball, but we spent a good 2 hours out there just the other day. Kids are sweating. We're in Texas heat, and we're having a great time. So it's those are the moments that I care more for. You know, those little tiny moments where now they can hit the ball over the net and they're just having fun and they're running after the ball and chasing the ball, and just the activities that happen in that short period of time of 2 hours. You know how many times I've sat down on my couch and watched a 2-hour show? I'm like, man, I wasted 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. And that's like moments you could have spent with your kids, whether that was taking them to the park, you know, taking them swimming, whatever it was, moments you could have went for a walk with them or a jog with them or whatever it was. But yeah, I just, I care more about my time with them right now. I guess this all comes about because I spent so much time. I lost my dad young. That was 1. My dad will never see my kids grow up. 2. 3 is I spent so much time trying to be the best at one thing. I felt like I did pretty well for myself. I was able to, you know, take care of myself. I did all that already. I have no other distractions right now other than just to be a good father. That's it. And a good husband. That's it. I have no other distractions. There's nothing else. Tell me what else there is. Like, I don't know. You have kids?
Yes. Yeah, I got 2.
Okay. And you have a business? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And kids play sports?
Yes.
Yes. Like, there's really nothing else in life. Everyone's like, oh, well, you know, you can go do this for so-and-so and go do this for so-and-so. I don't need to go do anything for so-and-so. If my kids need me there for that weekend, I can't do it. Like, I'm sorry, man. Like, I've got friends that have birthday parties and they got this, they got, hey, we have guys night on this night. Sorry, man. My kid's got a soccer game at 6:00. You guys are meeting for dinner at 7. I won't make it. Hey, I'll see you guys next time.
You say you're a good husband, and don't think I didn't catch it. You didn't give your wife's age out. I caught that.
No, I'm smart. Dude, you got to choose your battles, brother.
Yeah, smart move. Smart move,
smart,
buddy.
Gotta be smart.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about fighting. I know we got onto this, but this is my podcast has always been about life and fighting, and they're almost parallel.
Wait, one last thing though. Okay, so look, I just saw this video the other day, and what I've recognized is that, and I've had some conversations with some people that, and I don't want to say I lived, but I was in China for about 6 months, and I actually looked into it as well, and it is a lot of truth behind this. Kids on their first day of school, majority of kids in certain areas of China, when they sit down their first day of school, they show them a video. And that video is of their parents doing their manual labor at their job so they could send their kids to school. And the majority of those kids end up crying because they see the work that their dad puts in, their mom puts in, carrying baskets or running through, concrete, trying to like muck concrete around, whatever it is that they do, working in the fields, whatever it is, shows them doing the manual labor so that those kids could go to school. And those kids end up crying. From that moment, that's a precedent to your kids that your parents are putting in all this work so that you can get an education and become smarter, and learn and be productive in society. That changed the way that I think. I think that changed the way that I look at how parents are perceived these days. Like, I think kids should start being able to see what their parents do on a daily basis. That little video made me believe, like, maybe that's what we're doing wrong. And maybe in the US is that they're not showing these kids what the parents are having to go through every single day. They don't see, like, when I was living in the Bay, to take my kids to school, it would take me an hour. I'd go 40 minutes to take my son in traffic one way, then another 20 minutes, 15 minutes to take my daughter. And then because traffic was going the opposite way, it took me 5 to 7 minutes to get home. So it was about an hour to do it every day, 5 days a week during school year. Like, they don't see that the travel. And then I go from there to the gyms that I owned and walk and do the walkthroughs and teach classes and do the books, whatever it was for that day or the day before, and then come back and pick up the kids, recycle, do the whole thing again. It's understandable. A lot of these kids, the videos they were showing, their kids doing hard manual labor, and seeing these kids just understand, man, my parents are doing this. I can't let them down. I've got to make sure that I'm working hard for them. And that's very important. I think these kids don't understand how hard their parents are working for them to have these opportunities in life. And this, in the States, we've gotten away from that. We've got away from letting our kids know, like, how much work we put in. If I had to show old videos of me training, just drenched in sweat, cut sometimes below the eye or over the eye or in the side of the head, or, hurting my ankle. I mean, I was training for the second Gill fight, and Billy Evangelista jumped on my back and broke my fibula, like having to be carried out of there, like those type of things. Seeing the work that I had to put in to get to the level that I was at, I think it would make your kids appreciate being your child a little bit more. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, no, I think you're correct. It's the fact that our culture has kind of been overregulated a little bit, whereas they have to be almost pampered a little bit more than they should. And if you do show them that side, they think they're going to be scarred for life. I don't believe that's the case. And obviously China has proven that it's not. The culture would have to change, and that is incredibly hard to do in the direction we're going. Let's just put it that way. It's incredibly hard.
Yeah, I think what it was we got away from spankings. Look, I don't spank my kids, but I mean, reprimanding them firmly. Like, I think another thing too, I learned this a lot from being an analyst. If you're always yelling at your kid, they don't know when you're serious. Okay. If I'm always yelling at them, they don't understand. So I never really yell at my kids. But when I do have to yell at them, they understand I'm not kidding. That means right now. I know parents that just constantly yell at their kids, and the kid just starts all of a sudden, like, that's the way she talks. Or that's the way he talks. Like, right. All they do is if you're always in an 11, they never know when it's important at a level 10 or 11. Like if you're always above, you're always screaming, you're always yelling, they don't know when it's important. So always talk to them at like a 2 and a 3. And then when you are upset, you raise it to a 9 or a 10. And then they know, oh shit, this dude not kidding, man. He's about to whoop my ass. Like there's a level to it. Like, and I'm saying, like, I just have parents, man, that I know that are some of my closest family members. They're always at an 11. Hey, I said this, I said that. I'm like, yo, we're at a family dinner. Why are you yelling at your kid right now? Like,
Right.
it's not that big of a deal. Like, we're all family here. Like, if your kid spills or your kid knocks something off the table, no one gives a shit. Why do we care? So, like, say, hey, sit down, please. Like, everyone's around. We don't want to get food on each other. Just the conversation sometimes is better. And then when it's for me, I've found that raising my voice to them when it's something that could directly injure them. My daughter, when she was younger, she was 2. She literally, like, I put her down out of the car, went to shut the door. She tried to run off into the parking lot. I grabbed her, yelled at her. I was like, hey, what are you doing? Like, this is a no-no. She was like almost 3. So she understood. We don't run in the parking lots. No, you can get run over, this and that. A good conversation. Since then, always grabs my hand, holds my hand to the parking lots, looks both ways. That's what you get. There's times and a place. There's a time and a place to raise your voice and to reprimand them. And then understand that it's not always at an 11. Everything is like, hey, come here, talk a legit conversation. And then when it is time to raise your voice, it's time to raise your voice.
Josh, you're a good analyst. You're a great leader, it seems that way. And I'm going to say fighting may be a secondary to your. I'm being honest. And I'm not trying to just blow smoke up your ass. I think your philosophies and your parenting skills and the way you talk and express it, that might be your forte on this new show that you're having. This is something I think you're natural at, because we were going to talk fighting. We were just going to talk fighting. And then before we got on the air, we were talking about this, and then we jumped right into it. And it was very natural for you. You speak extremely well. There's no there's none of that. You are very forceful and very convincing on what you speak of and what you believe in. That is going to take you, I think, further in that space than an actually very successful fighting space. I think this space here is where you're heading. Now, is that something that you feel that you can do and move forward doing something like that as your appearances in the fight game go a little bit less?
No, I think what it is possibly. I can't say yes or no. What I can say is this: is that I sit every week with Bobby Lashley, Rich Chow. We talk about just being dads. We talk about the benefits to it. We talk about how we can benefit our children. We talk about the hardships of being a father and also trying to be a good husband. Those are difficult times, man. Like, you can't always have it your way. And majority of the time, I think the men have to bite the bullet and make sure that the family is always taken care of. And I would say that's 99% of the time. We are going to sit back and let the family lead the way. We lead the way, but then they reap all the benefits and the rewards, that's the point, I think, of being a strong man and a strong person in your household, is understanding that I do everything for them. Look, I already lived my life trying to get my rewards, be on TV, let the camera shine, like all that stuff. I don't need that now. I don't need recognition from my kids. It is nice when they say, hey, thanks, Dad. It feels so great. You know what I mean? But I don't need it. I can see the look on their face and they're happy. And that's what I need. I need that for me. And then I need that for them. In terms of, we sit down and we have these conversations, every week, and we enjoy it. It's almost, and Bobby will tell you, it's really just comes down to, it's like our venting, but it's not venting in a negative way. It's like, how can we make each other better? We don't have the answers. I can't say that the way that I'm doing it's going to be the same way that you should do it. It's not. Every parent is different, and they should be, because every child is different. I can't parent your kid the way you parent him because it's your kid. And he's got 50% of you in him. And so for me to sit here and go like, yeah, he's got to do it this way, it doesn't work that way. We can't paint a broad brush over kids and be like, hey, they should all be taught this way. They should all learn this way. It doesn't work that way. It absolutely does not work that way. My son is actually someone who needs hands-on learning. He needs to be in front of someone. They need to show him. He needs to do it with his hands. My daughter, 5 years old, can pick up a book and just start reading it. My son's like, looks at the book and goes, I hate reading. walks away. You know what I mean? Like there's just a difference. There's a difference between boys and girls, and there's a difference between how you can teach a boy and how you can teach a girl. Now, some of them can cross paths, but let's not say that they're the same, because there's not. There's different ways that they learn. There's different ways that they communicate, and you have to be able to make those adjustments as a father and as a mother and as a teacher as well. I mean, I think we learned, one of the things I like to say is we learned during COVID that it wasn't a teacher problem, that it was a parenting problem, because a lot of those parents ended up finding out at home that it was their kid that was the problem and it wasn't a teacher. Now imagine having 20 or 30 of those kids in one class with one teacher or a teacher and an assistant. You just had one kid at home during COVID and you couldn't handle them. You know, I mean, I remember seeing a ton of mothers posting drinking at like noon because they were done with their kids at home school or whatever, or school, the homeschooling at that time. Yeah, I'm done at noon. I'm out by the pool having a cocktail. Like, why? Because I just got done homeschooling my kid.
That's true. It's 100% true. Now, do you ever feel that guys, men in particular, you're an alpha, I'm an alpha, you know, not on your level alpha, but in my house, I'm an alpha. And
every male should be an alpha in their own house. And that's so, and I think every female in their house should treat their male as an alpha. I feel this, but I feel the same way. Every male in the house should treat his wife as like she's the alpha of the house. She is. And if your kids don't respect that, then if you don't respect your wife that way, then how are your kids going to respect your wife that way?
Okay,
so that's a big deal.
Let me get to a little blowback on that. Do you feel we don't get enough recognition, or we get enough slack to have those mental times by ourselves, and we're perceived as something less of a man if we need to, and if we are too hard, they say you're being too hard. Don't you think we need to have a dominant man in that house, as evident to the statistics that say what a child would likelihood of being in trouble if they don't have that male figure?
No, I agree. Absolutely. They should have a male dominant in the house. And I just think, look, I don't want to say male. I could take that back. Not male dominant. They need to have a male in the house, period.
Correct.
You know, having a male in the house will definitely it will allow, whether you have a daughter or a son, to have a male figure in the house. That's one, to bounce things off of. How should I do this? How should I do that? As a male, teaching a male how to use the restroom standing, teaching a male how to use the restroom sitting, teaching a male, you know, how to tie his shoes is different than how you would teach your daughter how to tie her shoes. I'm sorry, but teaching my son was very easy on how to tie his shoes. My daughter wants to learn a different way. She doesn't want to learn the way that I want to teach her. She wants to learn with the bunny ears and this and that. Like, they want to learn a certain way. It doesn't always work that way. But you also, I say male in the house, but I also say a female. You can't, like, it would be extremely difficult to have a single family parent home, no matter what. I think both kids need both parents in the house. And I think it's very beneficial to them to have both parents in the house, because not everything that a daughter feels like she can talk to a mother about, and not everything a son feels like he can talk to the father about. I can tell you this. My son does not talk to me about girls at all. He only talks to his mother. Only talks to his mother. That's it. He talks to his mother. And by the way, the one that I thought he would never talk to about girls would be his grandmother. And he has to talk to grandma. But yeah, there's this girl. Yeah, he's 10. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's not like, you know, I mean, like outside of like seeing each other at school, they don't have each other's phone numbers. They don't talk. They don't hang out outside of school. It's just, you know, like they play soccer at PE. So they kind of like each other. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's where we're at right now.
Well, I'll tell you, I had some questions here that I'm just going to scrap, because this to me is more interesting than the fights last week anyway. I enjoyed this talk. To someone who has kind of the same views that I have on fathers and dads and family. Unfortunately, I went through a divorce, but I've learned from that and was able to put it into effect on my new marriage. The mistakes that I made, I've corrected and done a pretty good job, I think, raising my kids. But I always like those ideas to bounce off of other men who are kind of alphas and in the fight game themselves. I talk to a lot of fighters myself, and it's always good to talk to someone who says, "Hey, you're okay. That what you did was fine." And I think your podcast, not only the Weighing In podcast, but the podcast you're going to have here, Dojo Dads with Bobby Lashley and your co-hosts are going to be successful because of the values you have as a person and a man.
Well, like I've learned a lot with from John McCarthy, who I do my Weighing In podcast with, and the two of us have bounced things off of each other. Like his kids are grown. One of his kids is I think a sheriff or a police officer in LA, in the LA area, and his other son lives in Tennessee, doing work out there. His daughter runs a 70-acre farm. I mean, like he's done his job, and he's seen that. Now he's got grandchildren. He understands, like, look, I've been where you're at. I understand he's had to raise his kids, and we bounce things off of each other all the time, man. I would say he's more like a father figure. He is getting older in age, so it's something I could bounce things off of. But it's fun. It's fun to have a conversation with him about certain things that are important in life. And he tends to see it like a little bit more in just a black and white, but he can also say it doesn't have to be that way. Like majority of the time, because when they're older, they have done it. They've been there, done that. But then also too, I don't think the majority of them take into account that the times have changed and they want it to be the same way. My uncles tell me the same thing. No, it should be like this. Yeah, times have changed a little bit. Like back then, like when Big John was raising his kids, he probably, I don't know if he has or not, but I'm saying like in my uncles too, and my dad, I got my ass whooped, man. Like it was an ass whooping. This day and age, the results have been shown. My son, I spanked him once when he was younger, and I didn't enjoy the reaction. I got a better reaction when I had a conversation with him and told him, and then he was a lot better of a kid after that. Sitting and chatting with him and talking to him, and like I said, it was a very serious situation where he got too close to the pool and he couldn't swim. And it was like, okay, like this, I told you stay away from the pool. I told you, and I was watching the whole time, but it was a constant thing. And so I wanted to make sure, like, hey, we were at a birthday party, hey, this is not going to happen. And so letting them know that it's important not to be near that pool was very important. He never went near a pool again. But actually, he was already learning how to swim within the next couple of weeks. So that's important. Like with Big John and with my uncles and people that I look up to in terms of, parental values and parental parenting advice. Like, yeah, some of them they're older, so they get stuck in a little bit of the old times, when in this time it's a little bit different. You've got to learn to make those adjustments on the fly. It can't always be, this is the way and this is the only way. It's not that way. It's always, there's room to adjust.
John strikes me as that comes from his law enforcement background too, where he'd say, this is where I believe, and these are the rules. That's what he strikes me as. Now, I could be totally wrong, but it seems to be that way that he would.
No, I mean, I think some of it too, though, is that you're the ref. Like you're the ref that wrote the rules. Like this is the rule. Don't grab the damn fence. Don't pull the shorts. Don't, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, but these are rules. They're not meant to be broken. And this is how it goes. I think a little bit it goes to probably police, background, and then, being a ref for so long. Like, I get it. I understand. And that's not a knock on him at all, because he's given me such great advice in so many things, so many situations. So, but hey, I'm not going to let you go without telling me fight stuff. Come on, give me some fight questions real quick.
Real quick. Okay.
No, what do you got? If you have a time frame, because you're the one interviewing me.
Listen,
I got about 25 more minutes.
Let's go with it then. Okay, so 306 UFC Noche. Number one, did you ever see the UFC being this big? It was a financial success. Did you ever see it being this big on this level?
Okay, so in 2001 to 2004, when I was with them, I didn't see it being this big because they were hemorrhaging money and didn't seem like it was going to actually make it. Then when I left and went over to Pride, and they got rid of the lightweight division for about 3 or 4 years, I think 2004 to 2006, so 2.5 years, and they brought it back, I started seeing it. After the Stephen Bonner and the Forrest Griffin fight, I started seeing the growth. I started seeing the events have more fans. I started seeing people buzz about it and talk about it. Now, I know it took a while for it to really grow even further, but I did see the things that I needed to see out of it. Pay-per-view numbers started to grow. People were rocking, more Chuck Liddell shirts, more Tito Ortiz shirts, more GSP shirts, like BJ Penn. Like it had that era of BJ Penn, GSP, Josh Koscheck. I mean, like there was a mix. Matt Hughes was kind of coming towards the end, but you had the era of those fighters that were still there. Chuck Liddell making his run. He started making his decline. People were beating him. Then you had John Jones making his run, being the youngest champion. I mean, the thing that they always lacked during that time was a top heavyweight, which Cain Velasquez was, but he was just littered with injuries. And outside of Cain, they didn't really have and Brock, they didn't really have an extremely marketable heavyweight. And that's kind of what sets the precedent for any combat sports. Boxing, when you have a top heavyweight that is just beating everybody, that everyone's talking about boxing. You got Tyson Fury, you had Muhammad Ali. You have top heavyweights that are just beating everyone. Everyone's buzzing, especially an active heavyweight. And they had one in Brock Lesnar. They had one in Cain Velasquez. It just didn't. During that time, during those times with Brock and Cain, it was successful. The sport had kind of trickled down. Then you had GSP, and you had the lightweights there, whether it was Habib, whether it was and then Jose Aldo and stuff like that.
Connor would be the one who
Connor would be the one too. But I mean, I lean more towards the Habib thing after he beat Connor. I think he became kind of more of the bigger face and things like that. Had he just fought a little bit longer, which we know he couldn't have. And hey,
well, I'm saying on a financial basis, I think Connor would be
absolutely.
Okay, but one of the top there. So where do you not see anybody coming up that can put that? Because right now I think they're going to have to build the superstars. I think Dana was playing a long game here with UFC Noche to try to get a Mexican superstar somewhere to build that weekend and Cinco de Mayo weekend. But I don't know if you see a star coming up that's going to have that potential at this point that could be that financial success. I think UFC Noche with the Sphere was an event success and financial. But to build a star, boy, I don't know if I see anyone coming down the pipe. I don't know if you do.
I mean, the week before Noche, I was saying Sugar Sean.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I don't know, man. I really don't know. I can't tell you this. If Usman Nurmagomedov comes from Bellator to the UFC and Islam goes to 170, he is the star. Umar Nurmagomedov potentially has star power, those two guys, and they're brothers. And the fact that you could piggyback going one's at 135, which I believe that Usman would eventually probably go to 145 and try to be champion there, double champ there. Usman, his brother, could be the lightweight champion. I think he could walk right in right now and potentially win the title, not from Islam, but beat Arman Sarukian, beat Justin Gaethje, beat Dustin Poirier. I think he has a good opportunity. Now, those guys could beat him as well. But that's what you're going to deal with every single time when you're talking to top fighters. You're going to deal with that. You're going to say, hey, this guy can beat this guy. The MMA math never lines up. And in any given night, they're separated by a 0.05% chance of whoever has a better night that night to beat each other.
Do either of them have the charisma, though, that I think you need a little bit of that charisma? Like the John Jones, you had the outside stuff. With Brock Lesnar, he was just a nasty dude. GSP, the way he carried himself. Does any of these guys have that charisma? The Nurmagomedov group, because Umar, I actually think he would easily handle Merab. I think he would, but I don't know if he has the charisma.
Umar's a little bit more soft spoken. Usman has a little bit more charisma than Umar does. Islam his sense of humor is drastically underestimated. He is funny. Hilarious. People don't realize how funny he is. All the years of training with him, he's one of the funniest guys in the room. He just has a bunch of one-liners that are just great, man. He's so good, so funny, good on the mic. He just doesn't get enough mic time, and I think they do that on purpose.
Now, when I say a superstar like that, we thought Sugar Shane was going Sugar Sean. Sorry, Sugar Shane is boxing. Sugar Sean, I thought he would. Initially, I thought because he was an underdog, I thought maybe Merab was going to. There was something that I didn't see, but then I saw Merab's fights with the Cejudo, and I thought he got hit a little too much there. Did that surprise you at all? And do you think there was something that something was off with Sean? Obviously, we find out about the injury. Why? I mean, I think financially he had to step in there and just fight it out. A torn labrum isn't the worst case scenario to deal with, but that kind of surprised me. I thought he was a little off. Maybe it was the event itself. What did you see that kind of raised a red flag there? Or was Merab just that good and we underestimated him?
No, I think Merab was just that good.
Okay.
I had that moment too where I watched him walk out and he seemed in awe of the moment of looking around going, man, when you saw Sugar Sean walk out. I think Merab was just that good though. The herky jerkiness of him, the feints in and out, the bouncing around. Sean wasn't able to get his timing when he was going to shoot. He just thought he was going to do what he did to Aljamain Sterling because they're training partners and because Aljamain stalks after you and walks after you and just kind of plots a little bit. And he's a little bit easier of a target to hit. That's not the case with Merab. Merab is someone who strikes wildly and then lowers level and just drives through you. And that's what we saw. He was literally just tackling Sean, like running him down and through him, and getting him down and then controlling him. I thought I was relying on, when I started talking about this fight, I was relying on Sean may be able to get a guillotine. He may, with the long, skinny arms, he may be able to get a triangle in some of those moments. And there were some threats that were there, but it just wasn't enough. And it wasn't often enough. So I don't think anything was, I don't want to say anything was wrong with Sean. Sean's talking about his labrum tear in his hip. I understand. I get it. But I can't take anything away from Merab, man. Merab had a great fight. He fought a great fight.
So now he wins the championship. And by the way, he is actually pretty funny himself. Some of the things he does on social media. What challenges is Merab going to face? I mean, because I don't know if he's going to be a one and done. I think he may be, just because he's got a murderer's row if he's going to go run through this division.
Well, the 135-pound division is the best division right now in the sport, and I'm a huge 155 proponent. I believe that 155 is the best in the sport of MMA. But right now, the most stacked division in the sport is 135. I mean, you got Patchy Mix on the outside. You got Rafian Stotts. You got Danny Sabatello. I mean, you got guys that are there, man, that are so damn good in other organizations that aren't even in the UFC. And so those guys potentially coming over could definitely spice up that division. But I would say, I think right now, I look at Umar being the next guy that's going to beat him. Umar's extremely funny. He's a great kid. I've known the kid since he was 19 years old. Hard worker. No distractions. He knows what the focus is. I mean, look, you asked me earlier, who do I see being a potential star? Tom Aspinall. He's wherever Tom Aspinall goes, I think the UFC goes. And I think one of the biggest things is let Jon Jones right off into the sunset. Go, be done, and just build your empire from there, Tom. Like he doesn't need Jon Jones for people to believe that he'll end up being the greatest heavyweight of all time. He has all the skill set. He's one of the few that can ever grapple off of his back and still strike. Fabricio Verdum could grapple off his back, but he had no striking, man. It wasn't great. It was, not anywhere near Tom Aspinall's level. And he didn't have the explosiveness of Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall can grapple from the top position, from the bottom position. He can get himself back up. He's got to probably work on his wrestling a tiny bit, because if you're going to face someone like an Almeida, you may get taken down a couple times, and a Curtis Blades, you may get taken down a couple times, but then look, he's beaten Curtis Blades. And so I think there's fights to be had there that he doesn't need to worry about Jon Jones. I know that would be probably an ideal world, get the win over him and let Jon Jones retire. And then I can go ahead and say that I beat the best guy ever. That's something, but it won't happen. I think Jon's retired.
Possibly, yes. I think you might be correct. I don't know if financially he would just walk over into the sunset, because he's missed a lot. He's not a guy that sponsors are going to jump on to get a sponsorship for him. Not a knock against Jon. I mean, everyone has their own demons to battle. So I don't think financially he is secure enough. It's just my opinion. I wouldn't know, but I'm just saying he missed that prime area where he could have made millions. And that's out. So I do think he'll fight Tom. But here's my blowback. I think I may be the only one who doesn't think Tom Aspinall is the greatest heavyweight. I just see a lot of holes in his striking, and Jon Jones, I think, would beat him. And I think there are some other strikers that possibly could beat him if they struck with him. I just see a way that he's open, and there's a lot of holes there. Don't know what his chin's like yet. But what can you convince me that Tom Aspinall is the guy that would be the heavyweight superstar that he could be?
Okay, so I'll tell you this. I've said this about everyone. Every heavyweight division, doesn't matter what organization you're in. If you can wrestle a little bit and grapple a little bit, you have the potential to go on a streak. Guys like DC, guys like Stipe, guys like Cain Velasquez, Brock Lesnar, they got wins because they could wrestle. If you can learn how to avoid submissions and wrestle and put that grind on them, put that work on them, you'll have success. Tom Aspinall, he maybe can't wrestle the best, but he's got grappling. And the grappling in the heavyweight division, those guys don't like to grapple. They're lazy when it comes to grappling. They struggle to get off their back. They're like turtles on their back. They hit the ground, they stay there. Look, Tom Aspinall's striking is not the greatest. You're absolutely correct. But what he does have is he has explosiveness. Now, when you're talking about him and John Jones can beat him for sure, and he could beat John Jones. The reason why I say that is John Jones has always had a problem with guys that were his height, his length, his reach, all those things. He's had problems with those. Tom Aspinall is naturally a big guy. Gustafson was naturally a big guy. Dominic Reyes, naturally a big guy. He struggled with those fighters because they were naturally around his size. He got away with being as long and as tall as he was in the 205-pound division because not everyone was his height and his reach and his range. He used to be able to do the whole, big brother thing. Put his hand on your forehead and hold you away and then punch you. He could do that to a lot of guys. He could do that to Santos. He could do that to Shogun Hua. He could do that to Lyoto Machida. He could do that to those guys because they weren't as big as him. Lyoto Machida is probably no bigger than me when I'm out of fight camp. He's not a big guy, and Shogun, same exact thing. A tiny bit bigger than Lyoto Machida. They're not big guys. You stand next to John Jones, you're like, damn, dude, you're like 240, 250 out of camp and fighting at 205. You know what I mean? So big difference. Big difference. Anyways, I look at Tom Aspinall. Once John Jones is gone, I mean, outside of, I can't think of anyone that can really beat him. He'll have a little bit of a run. I think he'll end up with 2 or 3, maybe 4 title defenses, and then you may start to see something change. But who knows on what heavyweights are coming in to beat him? They're gonna have to be heavyweights that are a little bit more of a world-class kickboxer, but have wrestling to stop his jiu-jitsu. That's where his athleticism is above majority of these guys.
Right.
I've been high on Tom Aspinall since he first came into the sport. He's phenomenal. He moves well, strikes well.
Yeah, and I guess that would be our little thing there because I knew him, but I wasn't quite sure he would. I didn't think he would ascend this quickly, when, in the UFC as he did. And I know Dana is looking for heavyweights and looking for light heavyweights to kind of pump up that roster a little bit. So maybe the next couple of years, we'll see.
I mean, look, the heavyweight division has nowhere to go, though. It doesn't matter. They can't steal any other heavyweights. You've got Renan Fajeda over in PFL. You've got Francis Ngannou, and you've got Ryan Bader. Those are your 3 options.
Yeah, and I don't see.
There's no other good heavyweights.
I don't see Ngannou coming back anytime soon.
No, he's not coming back. And then Goldsoff is also over there. He's good. I mean, those are like your top 4 heavyweights. The heavyweight division is a really weak division, and it's sad because majority of those athletes are off playing football or trying to play basketball or playing other sports or just being productive in other areas in the world. They're not trying to get punched in the face. And so I don't know where else you can go to find more heavyweights. Francis and it's a weak division. It was a weak division until UFC bought Strikeforce too. You remember Strikeforce had Fedor, they had Fabricio Verdum, Cain Velasquez. Cain Velasquez came from Strikeforce. Correct. He didn't come in the buyout, but he fought in Strikeforce first. And then you had who else? You had
Alistair was there, was he not? Or was he in Pride?
Yeah, Alistair was there as well. So Alistair was there. I mean, you had a ton of guys that were there that came over in the buyout. And so that's what spruced up that heavyweight division, but that didn't last long either.
No shot. You think of Pereira making a run at heavyweight?
Not against someone that can wrestle. I think he loses to Almeida because Almeida can grapple. And we saw him wrestle against Curtis Blades. He was able to throw him around like a rag dog the first round. If he does that
shocked me a little bit. Actually,
it did too. It did to me too. But I also think that Curtis Blades played along with it. He's like, you're not taking down. Cool. Just keep getting up. Keep getting up. He can't keep doing this to me. And then I'll start stuffing his takedowns. So I just got to survive the first round and a half of submissions, and then I'll be good. And that's what he did.
Right.
So I look at Alex. He's going to need a stylistically perfect matchup for him to win the heavyweight division. The reason why I say that is I want him to win 3 belts. I think Alex he's obviously the biggest star right now in the UFC, if not in the sport. He's quiet, Chama, everything is very, he's just so humble in what he does. That comes in, does his job, and bounces out, man. I mean, like there's nothing you can't see anything. I can't see anything wrong with him. He's got good enough takedown defense. He's only getting better every single day because he's training with Glover. Glover at 41 years old won a title. I mean, if he can do what he's doing now, Glover was beating those guys that are still in the division. You know what I mean? Ankalaev will be his biggest test. If he beats and knocks out Ankalaev, I mean, there's nothing left for him in that division. Nothing.
Right.
He's got Rakic.
I think Rakic, I believe, has a tough fight coming up. I forget who it is.
Yeah, he just lost though too. Rakic did. So if he's even further back behind.
Yes, I think that the only way would be up. That'd be the only thing to do. And then again, you dare to be great sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes you get knocked out, but at least you dare. You try it. You could at least get it to a different level.
Well, if he fights Ankalaev and beats Ankalaev, the only other fight realistically without going to heavyweight would be if Dricus du Plessis comes up to 205. That would be it. That'd be the only fight. But then Dricus has so many other fighters to fight in his own weight class. Now we're just doing this whole jumping weight class thing all the time.
Right.
And people are getting sick of that too.
Oh, so, yeah, definitely getting sick of it. Well, Josh, this has been unbelievably an honor for me. And it initially was supposed to be just fighting, but boy, it went into a place that I really enjoyed. You have a unique style. You have a plethora of knowledge and something that you're not just pigeonholed into fighting. And that's one of the things that I like about fighters when I see them outside of boxing, but outside of MMA too, is they have other skills that people don't understand and incredibly smart, just an incredibly smart and gifted personality too wise. So I wanted to thank you personally for coming on and giving me the time. I know it is your birthday weekend, so we got to get you back there. Hopefully you get to enjoy the time with your family that you so deserve. Again, it's an honor. Tell everybody where they can get in touch with you as far as your social media and your podcast and your new podcast.
Yeah, so down below, you guys can see the Weighing In podcast. It says at The Real Punk on Instagram. You guys can reach me there. If you guys slide into my DMs, I'll try to get back to you guys. I'm pretty good about hitting the comments up or hitting the DMs up. You can also follow us at Weighing In Podcast on YouTube. Also have the Dad Dojo podcast. It's called Dad Dojo Podcast. Dad Dojo Talk, Dad Dojo Podcast. It's on YouTube as well. And subscribe to us over there. That show has not released yet. It's coming soon. But we've got 14, 15 shows in the can. And we'll be dropping it this week. I think 5 or 6 episodes all at once. So make sure you guys subscribe to us over there. It's a fun show, man. I got Bobby Lashley, Rich Chow. Rich, if you guys don't know anything about Rich Chow was one of the top matchmakers in the sport of MMA for the longest time. He was a matchmaker for Elite XC, for Rumble on the Rock, for Bellator, for Strikeforce. And now he is a sports agent with one of the biggest sports management companies in MMA right now. So definitely someone who has a lot of knowledge, not just in the sports industry, but also too what it's like to be around athletes and have your kids around top athletes. And it's good, man. We have a great time. Bobby Lashley is obviously one of the top wrestlers, not just collegiately and high school level, but also to a pro wrestler. So it's fun just to get the three of us together, 3 knuckleheads in a room and just chatting it up, having a good time. So check us out, daddojo.com. And also the daddojo.com /weighing in or /YouTube or whatever in YouTube. So check us out there. Subscribe to us over there.
Well, Josh, again, it has been an honor and a complete pleasure to have you on. It was great. It was a great interview. It went everything I wanted to touch on, but didn't want to touch on. You know what I mean? Because I don't know you personally how far you go, and you were like an open book, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that from my audience.
Hey, have a good one, man, and good luck with the bagel shop.
Yeah, I mean, God, I got to get back to work in a couple hours.
Don't we all?
Josh, I appreciate it, my man.
All right, brother. Take it easy.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.